Brent Thomas of the Paranormal Portal. Welcome to Bigfoot Crossroads. How you doing?
I'm doing brilliant, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm thrilled that we finally get a chance to sit down and have a conversation, brother.
Yeah, for sure. We've been going back and forth in the online weirdo community for a while now. I'm glad to have you here and hear your voice for a change on Bigfoot Crossroads, man. It's awesome.
Well, it really is cool to be here. You know, you and I have been friends in the same orbit, as we were talking about just before recording. It's like, you know, we've known of each other and known each other for years, but it's just, you know, life happens. And so I'm thrilled to be on here with you, brother. I've been listening to you long before I ever had a show. I was listening to you and the boys. So it's a pleasure to be here, man. I do have to ask, you know, I apologize in advance. I just got back from being out of state for a week, and I'm fighting a cold. So
you're good, man.
Well, I might get froggy, so I apologize to all the listeners out there. I'm not currently in puberty, but I may sound like
it's okay, man. We're here for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, yeah, it's good to be here.
So how long have you been doing the portal now?
Oh, God, I started the portal as an internet radio show in April of 2016.
Wow.
So I guess it's 7 years now, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
You're an old man.
Yeah. And my math's getting worse. That's why I asked. But yeah, I started out then, and it was an internet radio show for probably a year, just over a year. And then I decided to spiderweb onto YouTube as well. So then I started in 2017. I started my YouTube channel and just kind of experimented with things. And fun fact, I started out doing reaction videos before reaction videos were a thing. But it was before the common use was kind of identified. So I kept getting copyright strikes. So I had to quit doing that, and I quit doing it completely, and then just kind of melded it into a topic show, variety kind of show, covering all the different paranormal stuff, whether it's cryptozoology, aliens, UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and I just really have had a blast doing it, and so I kept doing that for a while, and then it was actually kind of funny. I was doing a show. Now, as I said, I listened to you for years, and you were one of my staples. And then also would listen to, of course, Sasquatch Chronicles. And I would sit. I worked in a cubicle at the time doing marketing and stuff, and I had headphones on and would always listen to both of these shows. And I was doing my show on YouTube one time, and suddenly I got a live call into my show, and it was Wes. It's like, hey, I about fell over because it was like, oh my God, it's like a bucket list here. So he talked, and then afterwards he contacted me online and said, look, why isn't this a podcast? I'm like, I don't know. And so that's how it became a podcast. It was just kind of inspired by his advice. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I mean, of course, I'd listened to podcasts, but I never really thought, well, do I have a podcast? I just had a show. So, and it's been really cool. It's been wonderful to do it and to have an opportunity to talk to so many incredible people about their experiences, seeing the experiences through their eyes. And I guess the whole journey's been kind of like me just trying to understand this stuff because there's something going on in our world. There's a lot of things going on in our world that's largely ignored by our, traditional Western thinking. But it's happening. People are seeing 8-10 feet tall, hairy creatures and such, and they're seeing UFOs, which is finally starting to get vindication now, thank God, and there's having ghost experiences and so I just and having had several of my own of different experiences. So I was like, I just want to understand this if it's possible to. And I really don't know that it is, but at least every time I talk to somebody that has experiences, I think I'd learn something new every time because everybody sees things a little differently. And somebody I talked to may just come out and say something. They saw the event that's very similar to events that have happened to hundreds of other people, but they saw it in a unique way. And they'll pull some detail out. It's like, oh, well, that's interesting. So it's like this ongoing game of connect the dots kind of. But that's my personal motivation in doing it. But I just feel really honored to have a platform and to have a voice and to also be able to help people. I think it's really cool that some people have been carrying this stuff around for decades, without the outlet. And then they'll reach out and hey, I'd like to come on your show. They'll come on. And then afterwards getting emails or calls from them like, thank you so much. I've been carrying this for years and I feel so much lighter now. It's like they're carrying around these bricks, so it's been really, really humbling and really fascinating and an amazing experience. As being involved in all of this, it's quite an adventure.
It is. So did you had your own events happen to you prior to you doing your show and everything? So that was kind of your motivation for having an interest in these type of topics? Like what happened? What did you experience?
Well, yeah. How much time we got, Matt? Because it's going to get long.
I'm with you.
I actually, okay. So my first experience that I can recall, and I don't believe there's any that happened prior to this, as far as supernatural, crypto, 40 or whatever. But what had happened was I was hiking. I lived in, of all places, southeastern Minnesota along the Mississippi River Valley. And where I grew up was butted right next to a state park, a state forest. And so all through my young years, myself and friends that would be visiting, it was very rural, so I didn't have people near all the time. But when they would come in during the summers and stuff, we'd go adventure on the bluff and stuff. And I think I was about 14 years old at this time, and I was hiking up there on the bluff, which is oddly enough called Rattlesnake Bluff. True story. But we're hiking up there, and we'd been up there on the bluff, and it's, it's state forest. It's all rough land. There's not, any, there's houses within eye shot near, but not anywhere near where we actually were. Cause it's, again, the housing area butts right up to the forest. So we hike up onto this bluff, and we're dorking around up there all day, pretty much all afternoon, whatever. And it started to get later in the day, and we're like, yeah, we gotta find our way down because it's going to get dark quick and we're going to get stuck up in these woods with no light. So we started working our way down, and we're going down this kind of a ravine. It's like a dry run, looks like a stream bed, but it only has water when the melt off happens in the spring. So over the, hundreds or thousands of years has carved out this stream bed and with waterfalls and such on the way down. But at this point it was bone dry. And so we're coming down, and we got to a point, and I didn't see anything unusual. Nothing was out of the ordinary, just another day. And we stopped at this one point because you kind of got to plot your course. We go down the dry riverbed, and, there's lots of rocks and stuff, and it can be kind of treacherous. So we stopped, took a breather, and we're kind of looking ahead at the path. And suddenly, right behind us, and I mean within like 8 feet and above us, maybe by a couple or few feet, was this deep, menacing, rumbling growl. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm telling you, Matt, I swear to God, I grew up in this area. I'd lived there my whole life. The biggest thing we had in that area was white-tailed deer, and they don't growl. Now, at the time, I didn't know what this could be. I had no concept of it, because whatever was making this noise was so big, and it was just powerful. And I'm here to tell you, it vibrated my body as much as I heard the sound. It was just that kind of power in this noise. And I was absolutely frozen. Now, in a lot of times in experiences, people talk about, infrasound or being zapped or whatever, that they couldn't move. I could move, but I was so afraid, because in my mind, whatever was making that sound, I was sure was about to kill me. I mean, I just thought I didn't want to do anything to provoke anything. Now, interestingly enough, my friend had the same exact reaction. We just both froze and didn't move, and it just kept, and I can't even imitate it and do it justice. It was just so deep and profound. And I didn't dare look, because I guess I thought I was going to die, and I didn't want to know what the thing killing me was going to look like. At least, I was just going to be like, I hope this is quick. I don't know how this is going to go, but it was so menacing. It was so powerful. But finally, after nothing changing for a few seconds, I'm like, what the hell is that? And he goes, I don't know, but we have to get the hell out of here. And so they say fight or flight. You don't want to run because you don't want to trigger this prey response. But, I was a 14-year-old kid. And whatever. There was nothing in the fight category there for me. That was a foregone conclusion. I was like a Q-tip here, And so I knew that, fighting was not an option. The only thing left is flight. And so we took off. And it didn't pursue. It didn't make any other noise. But we just took off and went downhill, never looked back. And we must have run about 3/4 of a mile through this rocky terrain, getting the hell out of there. And when we got to the road, just turned around finally to look, and nothing was there. Nothing was coming, no sounds, nothing. And I carried that forever because all I knew is we had raccoon, we had fox, we had the occasional coyote, sometimes stories of like mountain lions or whatever, but only legendary, but nothing that was so big that it was actually so much taller than us and able to resonate a sound so menacing and deep. It was horrifying. It was, to this day, it was the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. And I carried that for years, and it took me out of the woods. I used to go up in those woods religiously through the warm months, and it took me out of those woods for a couple years or more. But finally, as a kid, and you want to go hiking, you want to go do things, and nothing else happening, I just kind of dismissed it and went back to being a part of the land that I lived in. But I didn't know what it was, and it was such a weird thing, and it just sat in the back of my mind, like, what is that? What was that? What could that have been? And I'm really grateful that I wasn't alone, because I think anytime you have an experience like that, you second guess yourself. Well, like, did that really happen? Was that really something that occurred? Or could it have been my imagination? Could it have been, some weird sound that I just misunderstood? Or, but having both of us there was really, at the time, it was comforting, because I was thinking, well, maybe I'm faster than him. No, I'm kidding. But I didn't know what to do with it. And I heard about Bigfoot. I heard about that because I used to watch In Search Of, and it's kind of dating me now. You kind of get an idea how old I am, but with Leonard Nimoy, and he talked about Bigfoot, but it was something in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in the middle of corn country, basically, down there. And so I had no reference point for what this could be. And it was just something that I carried for years. And it wasn't until the first time that I heard a sound that reminded me of it was when I went to the movie theater and saw the movie Jurassic Park. And it's the part where they're all kind of trapped in those cars, and that big T-Rex is kind of, wandering around, and then it sees the flashlight and it comes down growling just down to their level, looking in the car to those kids. Yeah. And it does this growl, and my whole body broke out in chills, and all my hairs stood on end. It's like, oh, I remember that. I remember something just like that. And it really brought me back to that moment. So then I started, full disclosure, I started watching Finding Bigfoot, and I started to learn that this wasn't a Pacific Northwest thing. It was everywhere. People are seeing these things everywhere. And it was like, oh my God, is that possible? In, where I lived, could there have been one there or some there or something? And it never occurred to me. After this realization happened, I went back up in those woods, and I know there's a lot of controversy around structures and around tree breaks, because if you don't see it happen, how do you really attribute it to a creature or a being?
Sure,
you really can't.
Yeah.
I went up into those same woods, started looking around, and found like a dugout structure with all broken sticks, nothing cut, up in that hill. And then I found like a 6-inch round maple sapling that was broke about 4 feet off down to the ground with no deadfall anywhere near it. And this is an untouched land, so it's not like somebody's out there logging and knocked down a tree and then drug it out, but it was just broken. And I'm like, well, they're very pliable. They don't usually just bend and break.
Yeah, yeah. So
then I was like, wow, maybe it really was. Maybe that's what I encountered that day. And so I don't have the luxury of saying, yeah, I had a Bigfoot encounter, but I had an encounter with something huge. And the only thing I can think that makes sense is that it could be a Bigfoot. So I guess it was kind of good to be able to give it a potential identity. But can I say it was Bigfoot? No, because I didn't look. But I didn't want to die either, so I made the right call.
Yeah, just sitting here hearing you talk about it, I've never heard you tell this story. Someone had mentioned to me at some point, hey, you should ask Brent about his Bigfoot story. Like, he's had a possible Bigfoot encounter. And I've just never talked to you about it until now. But the way you're describing it, a couple things come to mind. Being around that age myself at the time, me and my cousin were exploring this area on the outskirts of an extremely small town, a town with a population of around 100 people at the time. And we followed this long, dirt road. It had the trees growing over on each side. It kind of went around a curve, and as you came around the curve, it emptied out. It was actually a driveway, a really long driveway for the most haunted looking house I've ever seen in my life. Like Leatherface is going to come busting out of the door at any moment. But Leatherface didn't come busting out of the door. What did come busting out was a Rottweiler, not on a leash, not on a chain or anything. And that dog, It started barking and kind of trotting towards us. And as you were saying, at that age, there is no fight. There is only flight.
Right.
And I remember turning around and just hauling ass as fast as I could.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, my cousin is just sprinting by me, just leaving me in the dust entirely. And I was just waiting for that dog to clamp down on the back of my leg and kill me. Luckily, obviously, nothing happened from it. But that kind of terror whenever you're a kid.
The unknown part was the hardest, I think, for me, because something was up in those woods that I'd never encountered before. Through years of being up in those woods, something was now there that absolutely terrified me. And it's incredibly emasculating because you're 14, you're kind of coming of age.
Yeah.
You kind of you're starting to man up a bit, and you can do things, and then to have that happen and feeling like just a toddler, just feeling like a baby, was just like, oh my God. Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's a metric for the rest of my experiences.
I'm sure this is something you've experienced talking to other witnesses. We hear a lot of these stories from people about where they're like, well, I experienced something. I don't know what it was. I didn't see it, but it could have been. Mm-hmm. And me and another colleague were recently talking about that. There's actually another podcast host that has something going on their property, but they're not willing to call it Bigfoot because they haven't seen Bigfoot, and they're explaining it away. And I told him, I was like, if he didn't think it was Bigfoot, he wouldn't be talking about it.
Right. Yeah.
Some of the most terrifying things you experience, some of the most substantial encounters that happen, nothing is ever seen. But the point is that it sticks with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
That, to me, that's proof.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you. Absolutely. Because if it's powerful enough to impact your life and how you live it, then it's substantial. You may not know the exact cause, but I mean, how many culprits are available for something like that?
Right. A possible Bigfoot occurrence at the age of 14.
Yes, sir.
So your interest obviously isn't just Bigfoot specific. Your show covers all kinds of crazy topics, anything unexplained.
Right.
Did you have any paranormal experiences growing up or anything?
I've had a ton. None before that. Again, that was kind of my entry point, and none that I can remember right after that. My ghostly experiences mostly started when it was my ex-wife and I lived in a brand new house that my uncle had built, and we were renting from him. At the time, we were waiting to move into our own place, but we stayed in this house that he built and was just kind of sitting dormant in a very, it's a very suburban area. But the house was brand new. The land was just land before that. And that's when we first started having ghostly experiences. So I had a bunch of experiences in that house, a lot of footsteps walking around, which was very unusual. Sounds that didn't make sense. Now, it was a new house, so you got to attribute some of that to, it's settling, it's making its footprints as time goes on. But it was, I used to smoke at that time, and I was smoking a cigarette, and I worked nights. So on my nights off, I would just kind of just stay up late and kind of keep the same schedule. So my wife at the time was asleep in the bedroom, and I was sitting there smoking a cigarette on the floor, leaning against the sofa. My TV was up in front of me, and I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette, and suddenly there's, and I didn't know what the hell this was at the time. I learned since what it was, but at the time I was like, what the hell is that? Well, what I saw was this, I don't know if it was about a quarter or 50-cent piece size of a ball of light that was about 2 feet from my face, just drifting lazily from my left to my right at eye level. And I'm like, what the hell is that? I had no concept. I had no concept of what this was. And I was like, not so bright you couldn't look into it, but it had that same kind of radiant quality like the sun.
Yeah.
And it just kind of drifted slowly by my face. And then by the time I got to, just past my right eye, I'm following it with my eyes and my head. I'm like, should I grab it? And then I'm like, no, I should not grab it. I don't have any idea what the hell that is. And so then suddenly it just, pushed away to my right quicker and was gone. And I was like, what the hell is that? I mean, I didn't have a concept of spirit orbs at that time, or orbs.
Yeah.
I'd never really heard about it. So I had this experience, this little ball of light. And I'm like, what is that? And, since then I've come to, find out that but we had a lot of other things happen there. One of the creepier stories, and I'll share this with you. and I think it has to do with the setting more than anything. The activity was profound, but it was mostly the setting that made it just so creepy. So I'd come home from work. I was working in a factory, and it was very dusty, dirty kind of job. And I got home. Now, my wife had an absolute talent for doing dishes right when I'm in the shower. So I got hot, cold happening, So I was really excited this day because I got home early. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to have a fully hot shower. So I locked up the house, made sure everything's all secure. Went in the bathroom, stripped down, got in the shower, and I'm all lathered up. I'm in my, steam bath shower, just cooking and loving life. And then all of a sudden, the water goes ice cold. I'm like, oh God, she must have come home. I thought maybe she got home or something. So I'm like, oh, the water's freezing. I'm all lathered up. I'm like a soap balloon at this point. So I'm like, oh God. I'm like freezing and rinsing off as quickly as I can. I'm like, oh, that sucked. Shut off the water. And I hear water running, like a lot of water running. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I pull open the curtain. The hot water faucet in the sink is blasting full steam, not just running, it's blasting full, and there's steam coming out of there. And I'm like, oh my God. But just psychologically, being naked and being scared is really, really creepy. It was like, oh God, just thinking something was in there with me, and God only knows, what's going on. But it was just the whole, not that clothes offer much protection, but it's just psychological, But you're standing there in your birthday suit, and someone else you can't see is in there with you, and it's like, oh. So, and then I went and checked all the doors. The bathroom door was still locked. Went out in the house, nobody's there. Yeah, very strange. So that to me is one of my creepier experiences, but it's just because I was naked at the time.
I mean, yeah, that would be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Right. And now some people say, oh, it could be a plumbing issue. Well, I mean, if a faucet comes on a little bit, that's a plumbing issue. But it was all the way on. It was a brand new faucet. It's not like it was kind of worn. The washers were getting weak and stuff. I mean, it was brand new. And it was solid. Never turned on by itself before or after that. But it did that time. So that was a pretty profound experience for me in a different manner. But we did finally move out of there. And then moved into the house, which was one that we were moving into, which was built in 1894. It was a Queen Anne Victorian house, and a beautiful old home. But we had a lot of things happen there as well. Now, I don't know if, I've thought about it. It's like, well, did something follow us, or was it already in these places and just kind of woke up? Or, what? You don't know, but it had a lot of different things happen, like this door that went into the kitchen that, those double swinging doors that goes either way.
Yeah.
Is an antique door, but it used to get hung up on the carpet. And so, into one room, and then there was tile in the kitchen. But it would, if you went into the kitchen, it was fine because it would just go closed and kind of hit the carpet and stop. But if you went out, you had to kind of give it a little elbow grease to get it over the shag carpeting. And so I don't know, it was stuck in the open position. And this happened to my ex-wife, actually, but she was sitting there alone. Again, I was working nights in the factory stuff. So she was sitting there, and the door was hung up. And suddenly, all by itself, she heard this dragging noise, and then whoop, 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 like the doors doing its back and forth thing. And she's like, she freaked her out. And then she had this really cheap tubular brass furniture that was real popular back in the day.
I remember it.
Yeah. And you could hear every time anybody was ever, near them, like they were just noisy. And we didn't have any pets or any kids at this time. So it was just her alone another night. And she said suddenly she was hearing squeaking chairs, like somebody was sitting in the chairs and stuff. And it really, really freaked her out. And again, these are kind of one-off experiences. It's not like they happened all the time. It was just this weird random stuff that would happen. And so, it freaked her out. And eventually we separated and divorced. Not because of this, but, it certainly probably didn't help. But I was living then alone in the house at the time. And by then the tubular brass furniture was gone because, we got divorced. She took it with her or whatever. So I'm leaving my house one day, and I came out of the kitchen and went through the dining room, which is now empty. But in the dining room ceiling, there's this chandelier. And it's an older chandelier, not necessarily antique, but it was older, from probably the 50s or something. And I walked through the dining room, and I reached to grab the door to go out onto my porch and then outside to my car. But I reached and grabbed the door handle, and suddenly I had this feeling like, turn around. So, I mean, it wasn't really a thought. It was just a feeling like I should turn around. So I had my hand still on the door handle, and I turned around, and just as I looked back into the dining room, that chandelier pulled out of the ceiling and crashed to the floor. Now, when I say pulled out of the ceiling, I mean screws and plaster came down as well. It was like, it didn't just, it wasn't really hung well. It was there for, probably 50 years or better. And at that moment, it was yanked out of my ceiling and crashed onto the floor. And I was like, oh my God. So, true story. It really happened.
Wow.
Yeah, that one was a little freakier, but and I say this every time anybody asks, because they're like, did that terrify you? And I think honestly, and I say this with all sincerity, I think there's something wrong with me, because actually when that happened, it pissed me off. It's like, oh God, now I got to fix that. And I swear to God, that was my thought. Because I mean, it's not like life wasn't already hard enough. Now I got to figure out how to repair antique plaster and, rehang a chandelier and all that. So I was really upset, but I didn't get scared, So I don't know if something's wrong with me or not, but that's how I filtered it, with disgust and rage.
So having, the initial experience out in the woods, and then these events happen to you, and then you've been doing this podcast that spans all these different type of topics. Do you have one that interests you more than the others?
I don't think I do. I tell you what, they all fascinate me, maybe for the same reasons, because I think that each of these different topics serves to remind us that we don't really know our world as well as we think we do. We have this real arrogance about us, like, we've conquered the known world kind of thing. But this stuff just seems to happen in the face of all that, and maybe it's saying, you guys still have a lot to learn. Like there might, I don't know if it's a divine purpose to it or not, but it seems to be like it happens to show us, there's still more here. You're missing some of it. And I don't know, what the end game of that is, but I think it's kind of like Nikola Tesla said, that as soon as we start, really exploring the non-physical, then we're going to make more strides than we have in all of combined history. And I think he's onto something there because, I mean, if you think about it, Matt, a chandelier pulled out of my ceiling with no force visible there to do it. I've seen objects move. I've had a pen roll away from my hand as I was going to grab it. I've had doors slam and shut and, no visible perpetrator. And then, we got these huge beings running around in our forests that are not even acknowledged by our sciences, even in the face of what I think is overwhelming evidence. They just won't look into it. And then we're being visited apparently by beings from, who knows where. There's transdimensional or the distant reaches of the cosmos, but they're coming here utilizing devices that defy our known understanding of physics. And so it's like every one of these things stands to teach us something more about our world because we have all these examples. And I find that fascinating. And I honestly don't want to live in a world where it's just all labeled and categorized and put on a shelf, because that to me would be boring. I love that there's still mystery and there's still discovery, and that we stand to learn so much just by looking deeper into these things. And so I don't pretend that I'm the guy that's going to crack the case, but I do find it absolutely fascinating, from a personal standpoint and from, the idea that maybe all of this is meant to teach us something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's extremely egotistical of us as a civilization to think that we've got anything figured out. I was just talking to somebody the other day about how, the human lineage went a certain direction with technology because of certain discoveries that we made, most likely, by complete accident. And so we followed that path, which led us to this point.
Right.
But it could have, we could have discovered an entirely different type of technology that would have took us down an entirely different path.
Right.
It's just really interesting to think about. And that's just here on our own planet. and we're nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about it, even like the microwave oven, it was discovered because some guy had his ice cream too close to a microwave emitting device and realized, hey, you can cook with this stuff.
Hey,
look at that. My ice cream's a puddle all of a sudden. So it almost seems like there's almost an intelligence to some of this. And I think that, it happens to all of us maybe for any variety of reasons, but I just think this stuff is showing us something. This is the breadcrumbs. Mm. And I think it's arrogant not to at least follow it and see where that leads. And not that everything's going to teach us some profound truth, but I mean, things like with the spiritual stuff, that things, objects levitating, objects disappearing and reappearing in impossible places like a crawl space that nobody goes to. It's like, well, how the hell did that happen? That's like a Star Trek kind of thing. You phase it out one place and it appears somewhere else. Is that, some kind of weird wormholes, or is there an intelligence behind it? Is there portals happening that, we don't understand? All of this is demonstrating something incredible, and I think it's foolish to ignore that just because it doesn't fit into the box that we have set aside for physics and science,
A friend of mine who lives here in Oklahoma, we chat back and forth on a pretty regular basis. She's actually been on the podcast before, and we've kind of, we struck up a friendship with our mutual interest in the paranormal and all these kind of things. Uh-huh. And one day she messaged me and she was asking me about hair ties. She was like, those little black rubber band hair ties come in all different colors that girls, put ponytails up in and everything. I was like, yeah, sure. And she was like, well, I've been finding them. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but I've been finding them in like very specific places. Like I'll get out of my car at the grocery store and go grocery shopping. And then whenever I come back, there's one like laying right next to my car door on the ground. And it's always a black one. They're always black, no other color.
Huh.
And I was like, okay, well, and she was like, well, I, they're pretty common, lots of people wear them, so it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
And I was like, sure. And she was like, let me send you a picture. And she sends me a picture, and she had like a pile of like 100 of them that she had found randomly.
Wow.
I mean,
that seems to be a message.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what are they trying to say? Are they trying to communicate with us? Are they trying to show us something? Like, what's the deal? You know, there's that whole movie trope about, oh, they want help, you know, passing on or whatever. But what do you think? You've talked to a lot of people. Do you think they're really trying to communicate with the living? Are they even the deceased at all? Is it really the ghost of people that we're dealing with? What do you think's going on?
Well, that's kind of the $1 million. Really, but it appears to be in a lot of cases. You know, like when my dad passed away. This is kind of a personal story, but I'm happy to share it here. I think that our loved ones do find ways to come through to us, and sometimes symbology is a big thing, like symbols that maybe make us think about them or think about things attributed to them. And so it can be a song that you just manage to always hear. It could be, you know, I don't know, could be a cardinal, a bird, or, you know, something that you just notice, or a butterfly. Seems to be real common symbols. But I do think that that's part of them reaching through the veil. Now, am I sure about that? No. I mean, I don't know for sure what's here, but I think that like with my dad's situation, he chose dreams, and it was perfect. So my dad and I had a real challenging relationship. We butted heads a lot. He was a very stubborn man, and I'm a very stubborn man. So, and he was very old school, just kind of my way or the highway kind of guy. And, you know, and it's not like there wasn't a love between us. We did love each other, but it was just, we just bumped heads a lot. And he got the COPD, the breathing issues, and was getting sick. And, you know, I went and visited him at home, but then I came back out here where I live in North Idaho. The home, of course, is still in Minnesota. But, you know, and we visited a little bit, but there's still a million things left unsaid. And then the phone call came. It's like, yeah, your dad died. I was like, oh. And it's this crushing feeling of having all of these things that probably should have been said and had a million opportunities to say them, but for our own reasons, we chose never to actually have that dialogue. And so it was really really a painful thing, because I was like, well, I guess I got to carry this the rest of my life, you know, because there's no way for me to do that. But anyway, so I was kind of feeling bad and, you know, feeling sad that was the way our relationship ended. And then I went to sleep one night. And I'm here to tell you, I had a dream that was so real. It's more real than me sitting here in my studio talking to you. Everything was absolutely brilliantly vibrant and alive. I was standing in his living room, and there he was. And I had perfect consciousness about it. It's not like when you're in a dream and you kind of figure things out. It's like that whole experience. I knew where I was. I knew that I was me, and, you know, and what all of my emotional stuff I was fully cognizant of. So I was in perfect lucidity. And I turned, and there he was, standing in the living room just a few feet away from me. I'm like, Dad. And I put out my arms, and he put out his arms, and we embraced. And I'm here to tell you, it smelled like him. It felt like him. Everything about him was just as sincere and real as if he was really standing in front of me in this room. And I could, you know, feel him. Now, I don't remember him actually speaking, but we had an entire dialogue as we stood there embracing. And I'm like, I'm so sorry I wasn't a better son. And he's like, you know, I'm so sorry I wasn't a better dad. And we were able to just, in that moment, we were able to connect and heal. And it was this entirely cathartic experience of being able to put that to rest. And then before I knew it, you know, his embrace ended, and then it was like, boom, I was back in my bed, and I woke up just sobbing, just, you know, tears rolling down my face. And it was incredibly powerful and beautiful. And And I know that some people out there may be, well, it's just your subconscious coming to terms with the fact your father died. And so you created this experience so you could have peace with it and move on. But I mean, I'm a creative person, but as far as I can tell, that experience was as real and more real in many ways than most of my life. And so I think he did come through, and I think they do come through our dreams because that's when it's easiest for them to do that. We don't have all our distractions and noises and internets and radios and TVs and stuff that pull us off of that introspective openness. And so I think he came to me so that we could heal. And it was beautiful and it was powerful. And while many people may dismiss it, it's a real experience for me regardless, because it did help me to heal. It helped me to close that sore, that open wound that I was carrying. And I'm very, very grateful for it.
That's, first off, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. And I'm sure this is something that, you're fully aware of based on, the format of your own podcast and your own interest in this subject and the type of person that you are. It's easy to sit here and have discussions about the topics of the paranormal and the unexplained phenomenon that goes on and dissect what happens and, reports and encounters and all that. But whenever you talk to the witnesses, whenever you talk to the people that have these things going on in their lives, these are experiences.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the topic of ghosts and the paranormal. We're talking about a person's experience.
Yes.
And that makes it 100% real. And that's what's, to me, so frustrating, that the scientific community and the public at large kind of, looks at this as tongue in cheek, or, yeah, that's a pseudoscience, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't make any scientific sense. And, that's not possible at all. They're ignoring the experience factor. They're ignoring the fact that, okay, but this is something that someone's experiencing. So that perspective makes it real, no matter what it lines up with in terms of, adhering to our scientific protocols and our understanding of how things work.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a very powerful thing.
Right. No, I agree wholeheartedly. And whatever becomes real to us is our reality. And so, if I believed in, there were unicorns dancing in my backyard, there are unicorns dancing in my backyard in kind of a Schrodinger cat's way,
right,
until somebody goes and actively tries to debunk that. But our reality is subjective, and I understand that. And I also understand that people defend their paradigm fiercely. Like the people that are already skeptical, I'm not even sure that there's a way to make them believe, because they don't, their world is safe.
Right.
The way that they see it, and something threatening somebody's worldview is incredibly, powerful and could be detrimental for the people that are, so tied up in that identity. But, here's the thing, and you mentioned a word, and you said pseudoscience, and I'm here to tell you, for paranormal investigating, for, probably a lot of the techniques we use, it is pseudoscience. But the problem is nobody in the science body is willing to give us other science. So all we're left to do is to take things from other fields and adapt them to try to provide some form of evidence. It's like, if you're not going to help us develop a real science, then don't bang on our pseudoscience, because it's what we have. And we're trying to utilize other technologies like, FLIR. It was developed to look for heat and cold and, for utilitarian reasons or mechanical reasons or military reasons, but it wasn't meant to look for Bigfoot, but it can. That's very, very possible that there are some. I've seen some brilliant captures. Stacy Brown's capture from when he was with his dad is amazing, and the one coming out of Australia from the Australian Yowie Research Group Well, that was amazing. So I think it's, but it's adopted technologies because it's what we have to work with. EMF meters were not meant to detect disembodied presences. They were meant to detect electrical issues. But something's happening with these EMF meters when they're triggering off of unknown phenomena. So we got to use what we have. And so I know a lot of people get defensive about the pseudoscience, but it's like, well, yeah, it is pseudoscience, but it's because we're utilizing the tools that we have available to us. And if it is, if they can do it better, they should give us better science.
Sometimes wars are fought by people who were never soldiers,
Right. That's right.
You got to do what you got to do sometimes. And that's kind of the boat that we're all in.
Right.
Has there been an episode or a certain guest that really got to you, like really unnerved you or bothered you?
Oof. I mean, there's so many. That's a tough question to field because everybody, like you said, everybody's experience is their reality. And so I just have this profound level of feeling absolutely honored that people feel compelled to reach out to me and to share their story because maybe they want to put it down finally. Maybe they want to help other people or for any number of reasons, but they want to share what they've seen and experienced. And I think that anecdotal evidence is so powerful in these fields because we're relying on a lot of it in order to understand this phenomena we're dealing with and all the varied phenomena. So, I'm honored to talk to everybody. I was really, really thrilled to have had the opportunity to sit down with Bob Gimlin and talk to him, the godfather of all of this. I mean, Bob was just the most profoundly sincere and down-to-earth person I've ever met. And I really feel thrilled that we were able to have a discussion and he was able to share his experiences. And, I talked to him about Patty, but also talked to him about the fact that he was neighbors with Evel Knievel.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It's so cool.
Can you imagine?
So we talked about that a bunch when he appeared on my show as well. But it's just one of those moments to have a chance to talk to somebody that I mean, quite honestly, Bob's older now and he's getting older all the time and it won't be long and he won't have that voice anymore. So I felt really honored to have had an opportunity to have a discussion with him, even though maybe he repeated a lot of the same things he's already discussed a million times. Not many people have talked to him about Evel Knievel.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a really cool one. But I mean, is there any one more than others? Not really. I think everybody that I talked to, I might be being redundant, but I couldn't be more sincere that everybody's experience is incredible. And I think a lot of people have this real Hollywood idea of all of this stuff. Like, well, if you don't have books flying around your room and doors slamming, then, it's nothing big. Well, good God, if your cereal bowl moves 8 inches, that's huge.
Yeah. If your faucet turns on while you're in the shower, that's a big deal, folks.
Especially when you're naked. But anyway, but we don't need to have poltergeist level phenomena for it to be incredible. I mean, it's little things, I love the stories that are like, there's a long time ago, I covered a story like this where somebody always put their keys in the same place, They had some activity around their house, but they were going to leave to go to work one day. They went to grab the keys, and I think it was in a bowl right next to the door, on like a chest of some sort or stand. And they reach in the bowl, and the keys are not there. And so they're like frantic. They're late for work. They're running around, tossing the whole apartment, looking around. And then these keys are not to be found. And then after about 15 minutes of frantic searching, looking, they're in the bowl by the door. It's like, oh, well, that's really weird. But God, I'm late. I got to get to work. Well, they go to work. On the way to work, they find out that the path they drove, if they had been on time, they would have been in a fatal car accident.
Wow.
Oh, something incredibly profound stepped in. Is that divine intervention? Because it's, it seemed like a nuisance kind of activity, but it very well might have saved their lives, So it's something little like that can have these profound impacts.
So I want to get back to Bigfoot for a second.
Sure.
You've talked to a lot of Bigfoot witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
You are an active person in the Bigfoot world. You know what's going on and what's happened. I mean, you've interviewed Bob Gimlin about Evel Knievel. How more can you go into the subject? So you're aware as much as I am that there's many different schools of thought whenever it comes to Bigfoot.
Yeah.
What is your perspective on the flesh and blood versus the paranormal Bigfoot paradox?
You know, this is a tough one. And it's one, honestly, and to be absolutely sincere, I have a hard time with wrapping my head around it. And it's not me saying I don't believe that's possible, that a Bigfoot could just be portaling in or out or disappearing or doing all these incredible supernatural feats. But it's just, we all have our paradigm. We all have the limits of what we're capable of thinking around. And it's not me saying, no, that's not possible. I don't believe that. It's just me going, I don't understand that. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's my own personal hang up, because I do tend to be logical about it, but it's just a fantastical idea to me. And if they are doing that, then what does that mean? How do they do it? Is it possible we could learn it? Is it a technology of some kind that we don't understand? Or is it just that they are these transdimensional beings? Are they from the stars? Are they just a relic hominid that's wandering around? And here's the thing. I do believe that they're flesh and blood because they leave footprints, and that requires a mass. They're observed eating. Many, many people have had sightings watching them eat or seeing them eat things. They physically interact with the world around them. So, I mean, they do have a physical presence. So it's not, I don't think, a big leap of faith to say, hey, look, they're flesh and blood. Now, do I disbelieve people's stories? No. But I don't understand, I'd say, again, it's my own paradigm. So I chalk it up to, I don't know what this thing is. I mean, I know that I believe that it's flesh and blood. I can answer that, I think, conclusively, or pretty much, I mean, without having shook hands with one, but because we can see evidence of them being physically present. Are they always, though? I don't know. I mean, that's where I get stuck. And so, I've interviewed the people that have seen these things right in front of their eyes, and I believe them. I really do. It's just that I don't know how to process that. So that's my own shortcoming, I think, more than anything, because, I just have to have a basic rudimentary understanding of it. And without that, it's just like, well, what does that mean? I don't know. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or am I rambling?
No. I'm on the same page. It's a lot. I've definitely talked to enough people. I'll go back to the experience thing. I've talked to enough people that have experienced paranormal Bigfoot events, supernatural Bigfoot events, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And I believe them. I believe that, they experience what they experience, but it is certainly something that I'm not able to wrap my head around. Now,
yeah.
The one stipulation of that being, I do have a very strong opinion at this point, which could change tomorrow, that Bigfoot is closer to human than it is to animal, as we understand the difference between humans and animals.
Sure.
I believe Bigfoot is a type of person to a certain extent. I have seen enough evidence of that.
Yeah.
At least that's where I'm leaning at this point. So with that being said, I think it might be possible, and shout out to DJ, who I'm sure will listen to this episode. This is one of his favorite topics. So I'll ask this on his behalf. The possibility of these paranormal Bigfoot events being explained away as perhaps they are Bigfoot ghosts.
I've heard that before. I've heard that suggested before, and I don't see why not. If there are reports of ghost pets often.
Yeah.
People seeing spectral animals in the woods. I've got trail cam pictures that were sent to me by my own cousin in Tennessee of a spectral dog that he caught. and it's, you know, it's very translucent, it's very wispy, but it's very clearly a canine. So why couldn't it be possible then that Bigfoot, when they, you know, die away or, you know, leave their body, they could linger? And that does make sense to me, you know.
I mean, it kind of, you know, fits the mold, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, several other precedents of that out there, not only human, but other, you know, creatures of this world. So, yeah, I think that's a great take, a great possibility. Or it could even be some other form of spiritual mimicry. We cover doppelgangers a lot on the show. Well, not a lot, but from time to time, where people see a doppelganger of either themselves or someone else that's in their family or someone real close to them, and then we'll see the real person several, you know, feet or distance away that they couldn't possibly have gotten to. So I mean, there's does seem to be the precedent for spiritual entities, and I don't think that they were human necessarily. There's a bunch of things out there that weren't human that we understand as spiritual, in my opinion, and in, you know, several other opinions that I'm aware of. But so is there something that could be mimicking that?
Yeah.
It's, remember, and it's kind of a silly reference, and I don't mean to be childish about it, but remember in the Harry Potter movies when I don't know if you watched them.
Yes, I'm familiar with.
Right. So they got the Bogarts that's in that cabinet. Then they open it, and for each person, it assumes a different form.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, there are beliefs and legends from, you know, a lot of cultures around the world of there being spiritual beings that do just that. Right. And so there was a historical precedent, or at least legendary or folklorish precedent, for the Bogarts. So is that possibly something like that? And it could be.
That's interesting, for sure. I hadn't even thought about that angle.
Right. Yeah, just how my head works.
Are you following the UAP disclosure stuff?
You know, I just got done traveling when all of this was going on. I just got home yesterday, and I've been hitting the ground running, but I fully intend on sitting down and watching a bit of it, maybe even later tonight, but at least in the very near future before my YouTube show on Wednesday, because I'd like to have a knowledge of it. It's kind of the hot topic now.
Yeah. So let's just pretend, let's fast forward that it comes out, full disclosure, the government's like, yep, they're real, you know, here they are, blah, blah, blah. What do you think happens then?
As far as for me personally, nothing. I've seen UFOs. I saw a very clear present UFO that was not real far from me a few years back, about 8 years back. No, probably about 10 years back now. But for the world at large, I don't think it's going to have the earth-shattering consequences that everybody thinks, because I think more people are open to the idea than not. I mean, even when the Navy released, they were kind of forced to release it because I think it leaked first, but all those Tic Tac craft, those things leaked. Mm-hmm. There wasn't panics or riots or anything. There were people like, how about that? You know, it was like Tuesday.
Yeah.
It wasn't the end of the world day. It was just like a Tuesday or something. You know, I mean, people are, I think, way more open than they're given credit for. And I think people can handle a lot more than they're given credit for. I think that, you know, put the truth out there. You know, my God, how long ago was it that Bigfoot was a whispered topic, barely discussed, and now everywhere there's conferences and people out there looking, you know, I mean, we handle things just fine. So, but yeah, I've seen them. I was already in nowhere.
If it happens with Bigfoot sometime in the future where we have Bigfoot disclosure, do you think that changes anything? Do you think people will quit going out into the woods? Do you think people go out in the woods trying to shoot one? Do you think it would have an impact?
It'll be the end of that species, in my opinion. It will be the end of whatever remains of them, because it will become the next big craze. Well, they saw a Bigfoot there. No, they're out there. Let's get in the truck and go. And so you're going to have this influx of people suddenly going into the forest in places they've never gone. And I don't know how much territory they need, but I know that they've been progressively encroached upon for hundreds of years. And I don't think that there's many options left to them. I mean, there's still big stands of wild areas in our nation and in the nations between us and Canada and stuff, and probably around the world. But the point is that I think we have a tendency to destroy what we love. And somehow there will emerge a black market where a Bigfoot testicle will cure cancer or something. And, there'll be that. Then there'll be those that want to put them in zoos. And my God, I don't think I could think of a more tragic sight than that. But whatever these guys are, it's kind of like the Jurassic Park line. They've chosen our absence. And I think we should honor that. But that if it becomes proved, and it's a foregone conclusion that people will head out into the wild places and they'll be harassing the hell out of them. And probably they're probably in a pretty fragile state anyway, just because of the encroachment and the expansion of our civilizations. And I think it may very well push them over the edge and they'll become a memory.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest problem with disclosure of these type subjects in general, whether it be, UFO/UAPs or Bigfoot at some point. Not necessarily the acknowledgement that those things are real, because like you said, there's plenty of us out there that know they're real already. But the human factor of, the chaos that will ensue from people disagreeing and trying to figure out what to do about it. How does that affect us? What should we do? And, I do see like political divisions being drawn, your different camps, put them in a zoo, they're an animal, shoot them, eradicate them. It's not safe to go out into the woods anymore. And then you've got your people who will want to protect them, which, that's been one of my hangups for a long time, actually, is certain individuals claiming to have these intimate relationships and knowledge of these creatures. And, the people who claim to have, habituation happening at their homes and this intimate knowledge and wisdom about these creatures, and they talk to them and everything else. And I'm just like, if you really had their best interests at heart, you wouldn't even tell anybody that you knew anything about them. Why are you coming on the internet and telling people all this stuff? If you I wouldn't tell anybody. I don't even know what a Bigfoot is. That's ridiculous. No, they don't exist.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, because bringing more attention to it is not going to be helpful to them in any manner. I mean, there's the double-edged sword of it. Do people have a right to know they're out there? Sure, I guess maybe there's that, but I think that if anything, all of the reports that we've got, and you've gotten more, probably you've been exposed to more than most, and generally, the reports are real peaceful. They're just like, oh, there's a person here. I'm moving out of here. They just leave. They just avoid, unless, of course, there's the stories of people being harassed in a campsite. But there again, this is their homes. We're moving our little tents and little tent communities out, maybe into their living room. Maybe it's, right by the perfect view by the little stream next to the forested area. Well, that might be where they, get their fish or whatever. These are perhaps habits and traits that have been handed down over thousands of years, and then in comes the campers and stuff. So yeah, they might get harassed a little bit. But generally speaking, most of these encounters are very peaceful. And these beings are so strong and so capable that if they were malicious, you'd be dead before you even knew they were there. They are so capable.
Yeah, 100%. If that was a Bigfoot you heard that day when you were 14 years old, if it wanted you, you guys wouldn't have made it out of the woods. You wouldn't. That would have been it.
I wouldn't even have heard a growl. It would have just been, lights out. Yeah, because somehow it got all the way behind me, in a fairly not completely open. It was still a forested area, but it wasn't like, tough, tight knit, groupings of trees and bushes. It was, like a nice mature forest canopy, where you got room. But somehow it ended up right behind us and way bigger than us. And I didn't hear a sound until that growl kicked in. It was like, oh God, So, there's no question. If they wanted people dead, there'd be a whole lot more missing 411 going on.
I've got one more thing I wanted to ask you while I had you on here.
Sure.
Did you do a recent spirit box session in your studio?
I did. I've been doing that the last several Saturday nights that I've done live shows. I've been doing it right here in the studio.
Have you gotten anything?
Yeah, dude. One of the first times that I set up it's based on the Huff portal, but which would take a big explanation to kind of get into it. But it's basically instrumental transcommunication, which is the idea that we use objects, mechanical objects, to hopefully interact with spirits. And this one is supposedly they are able to supposedly manipulate the sound in order to make words. So I literally said, okay, guys, we're going to get to the live investigation now. And I turned on the device and I said, I said, all right, is there any spirits that want to communicate with us? And right away, a voice came through and said, yeah, I do.
Wow.
Now, this was using a sound database of fractions of words, like they're just syllables.
Yeah.
But it was like, I do. Same voice through the whole thing, which, I mean, I talked to the guy that gave me the setup, and he said, that's not possible. That's definitely paranormal. They can't do that. I was like, yeah, I thought that was really weird too. And then I set up a flashlight test. It's where you have these twist off, twist on little mag lights and stuff. And basically you position it so it's just a hair off, but almost on. And then you set it down. Yeah. Now, those can be really interesting, but, there's some cautionary parts of it too. And one of them is that, look, atmospherically, things can change and make it go on and off. But
right,
if you can tie the correlation of events to questions or interactions that you've requested, then it becomes a little more mathematically difficult to disprove, because, I was consistently getting, the light coming on for yes, and, and then asking them to shut it off, and boom, they would shut it off. And it was really, really, really cool. Then I got these stupid little cat balls off of Amazon, and they're little cat toys that when the cat moves it, it'll flash these little LED lights. But it turns out people are using them for investigating, and I've had some great indicators off of that. Now, can I prove there's ghosts here? No, but having several different modalities out and several of them being triggered, I think to me is reinforces the possibility that there is something here that was communicating with me. So yeah, true story.
Wow, man. I'm going to have to check that out. Where can people find you? Where do you want to send them? Everywhere? YouTube, iTunes? What do you got for me?
All right. So the podcast is the biggest platform by far for the Paranormal Portal. I'm working on the YouTube, but I have been for longer than the podcast. For some reason, YouTube is a tough egg to crack. But the podcast is available everywhere: Castbox, Stitcher, iTunes, Pandora, Google Play, iHeartRadio, any of those platforms. Spotify, of course, is a big one. So you can look for Paranormal Portal out there. We're in our 5th season now, and unlike a lot of shows out there, I'm just going to flex a little bit here.
Flex away, man. Flex away.
All right. When I do a season of shows, it's 52 or better episodes. So I'm on my 5th season of shows now. Just finished episode 5 and of season 5 that's posted now. But you can find all those out there. You can go over to youtube.com/paranormal portal, and you'll end up on our YouTube page. And there's I think there's about 1,200 YouTube videos over there now.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I was literally doing 10 shows a week for a number of years. So,
jeez, putting in work, man.
Dude, I'm telling you, I was doing 3 podcasts a week and 7 live shows a week on YouTube. So, I was working hard, but it's gotten me some recognition. So it was worth the effort, but it did take a lot of investment. And you can also go to paranormalportal.net and find our homepage, and that'll link you to everything. So all of the social media and stuff, if you want to catch up with me on social media. If you want to email me, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Love to hear from you as well. So that's everything, I think.
Brent, man, thank you. Thank you, sir, for joining me. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's really good to talk to you, brother. And likewise, you're going to have to come on the portal, and we're going to have to show the audience Mr. Matt Knapp.
Yeah, fair is fair, man. I've got some stories for you.
Excited to have you on, brother, for sure. But thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And if you've experienced something you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out BigfootCrossroads.com for links to the social media, a contact form to reach me directly, links to the merch, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.